Joining me now is Brendan Ahern, the Chief Investment Officer of KraneShares. All right, so Brendan, I keep thinking of David Tepper's China play from last year, which at first was off to a little bit of a rocky start and now really has picked up steam.
Yeah, 100%, Kelly. We're getting a bit of a pullback here today, driven by some of the CFIUS news from President Trump last Friday. But in general, we were a bit overbought. We've had a heck of a run. Actually, going back to January 22nd of last year, KWEB is actually up over 50%, which is twice the return of both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100.
So what kind of explains that? I mean, in the bigger picture sense, right? Everyone could hope and bet on, and this goes back to Tepper's comments. They say they're going to stimulate. I take them at their word, and that's what they're doing. We've seen President Xi being more friendly towards the tech leaders. That's a huge change. It kind of indicates an openness towards, more success there on the investment front. What else?
Yeah, we've had a number of comments from both the Ministry of Finance about just supporting domestic consumption. We also had Premier Lee hosting a meeting with the State Council where they spoke at length about domestic consumption. So I think, next week we're going into really the beginning meetings leading up to the big dual sessions. This is the real kind of legislative meetings in China where they set the budget, set really the agenda for the next year. So I think this emphasis on the private sector as well as domestic consumption shows that coming out of that meeting, hopefully we get some further stronger stimulus, as well as we really do believe that China needs to do a deal with President Trump in order to address the real estate crisis, the ongoing real estate crisis in China. So we think, that's a very key function for the Chinese government is to get down to brass tacks with President Trump and do a deal.
Wait a minute. Now, President Trump is a real estate specialist, we could say, but what could he or the U.S. offer to fix China's real estate crisis?
Oh, I'm saying that the Chinese government needs to do a deal with President Trump to allocate the resources to address the real estate crisis in China. They're not counting on President Trump to deal with that domestic issue. But I think for the Chinese government, because President Trump is so unpredictable, they've had to keep a lot of dry powder on the sidelines. They want to allocate that. They want to address the real estate situation. But I think in order to do so, they got to do another deal with President Trump.
So we have 10% tariffs on China effective as of a couple of weeks ago. What's the impact of those been?
I mean, it's pretty de minimis. I mean, thus far, the markets, both in the U.S. as well as in China, have really really just kind of ignored them. I think this could be a little bit of the art of the deal, as we saw with Friday's announcement. We know President Trump is going to get a great deal on behalf of the American people. We know China's going to have to give up some things in order to satisfy that. We really think agriculture, as we're seeing with corn and soybean futures rallying since President Trump, Boeing airplanes, but we also think potentially the Chinese companies are allowed to build factories here in the U.S., something that a number of them have mentioned they would like to do, but we're actually told no by the previous administration.